This is Hobijn, and I'm your professor in um, macroeconomics. This is me, um, and welcome to the office hour that we're going to spend some time with um, this this hour discussing what we've done so far in this course. I know this is going to be a busy week for you, since you'll be both involved in learning some more stuff in the week 4 material, as well as doing your midterm. So, my apologies. So what I'd like to do today for you is basically 3 things. Give you a quick overview of what you've gone through for the course. There's a lot of material here, and I can't cover every single piece that you've covered in the last 3 weeks to help you prepare for the exam. I want to give you some advice, not about the technical thing on the proctoring. You need to test that yourself on your specific computer, but more on how you would approach an exam like this in a course like this. So, what I'd like you to do is think through the kind of the course preparation and the exam preparation, and so I'll discuss that with you as well, and then I'll talk a little bit about what's going on in week 4 and the rest of the course going forward. You're halfway there, and so you should be excited about it. This is a course with a lot of course material in it, so it is I hope you're enjoying it, and I hope you're enjoying all the interactives that we enjoyed making, but it's definitely a course that's time-consuming, and there's a lot of material there. So what I hope to do first is just give you kind of a structure to think through all of it again, and hopefully that helps you when you review your material for the midterm in the coming days. So to do that, I'm going to share my screen with you, and we'll go from there. So the first thing to note is, this is the course image that we have for the course, and it contains a lot of the elements that the course is about, but it also goes to show how much is being covered in this course, how many things are actually being covered. So let's first just think through, in order to understand this amount of information and material in a course like this, I want you to start thinking through getting a stylized framework that you can use to kind of hang on all the information on. And that framework is really the circular flow diagram that keeps on reappearing throughout the course material. So what we've covered so far is what households do, how they use their income that they get to decide how much they consume and how much they put aside to save. We have considered what firms do and how they basically decide on how much to invest and how much capital to use and how many people to hire in order to produce the goods and services it sells to households. The goods and services. Let me see whether this works. No, sorry. The goods and services it sells to households. The goods and services it sells to businesses, and the goods and services it sells to the government. So that was the first thing to realize. And we've gone through a household's decisions in great detail and through firms' decisions in great detail. Now, what I want you to realize is that when we went through the household's decisions in great detail and the firm's decisions in great detail, a few things are important. One is to understand the main conceptual things we use, which is households' preferences and firms' production functions, and the concept of marginal analysis. So those were kind of the foundations from the microeconomic side that helped us understand how firms and how households make their decisions. And households' decisions are their labor supply decisions and their consumption and their savings decisions. And firms' decisions are their factor demands, how many workers to hire, how much capital to use, as well as their output decision. And as you are learning this week, but that's not part of the midterm material, also how to set their prices in principle if they face a particular downward sloping demand curve with imperfect competition. But that will come in part 4.1. Well, actually, that was already in part 3.2. My apologies. So that is part of the midterm. So those are the decisions a firm makes and a household makes, and it's all about the marginal analysis. They equate marginal costs and marginal benefits of different decisions. So one of the things to think through is make a list of those decisions for yourself and think about what are the marginal costs and what are the marginal benefits. Now, those are what we call the micro foundations, the microeconomic foundations of the macroeconomic decisions in the overall economy. And then, of course, the macroeconomy is about what it all adds up to across individuals and across households, across businesses, and then later on we'll add the government as well as foreigners to this. So what is important, though, is to keep your eye on the price. There is a certain set of questions we would like to answer using this macroeconomic theory. And that set of questions has to do with these pictures. And basically, there are three main questions here. Why is New York City in 2014 so much richer than New York City in 1902? This is known as the growth question. The next question is, why is New York City, why are rich countries so much richer than poor countries? So why is New York City so much richer than Bangui in the Central African Republic? And this is known as the development question. Why are some countries so much more developed than other countries? And then there's a third question, which is why are economies susceptible to something called business cycles? Why do all economic variables tend to move together over time? And those are the three main questions we're after. So what we've done so far is we've looked at households and we've looked at firms. And we then have those households and firms interact with each other in markets. So we've also studied behavior in markets and kind of basic market equilibrium with a demand and a supply curve. We've looked at a price floor in a market and a price ceiling in a market, and we did that all in part 3.1. And so once you understand these parts of the of how markets work, then it's important to think about the markets specifically that macroeconomists look at. So what I wanted to do here with you is talk you through a couple of examples and kind of have you in the right mindset about why stuff moves together in macroeconomics. So what we're going to do is we're going to again look at the course material. This is an item from 3.1.3.4 that I pulled out, the second interactive. And what I want you to take away from this is the whole economy in Adam land. So this is Adam. Where we are now, Adam is 100% happy, but could be more happy. And what we're going to look at in this economy is what happens if the productivity, so basically we're going to have a steeper slope production function in this economy. So productivity goes up, and for the same amount of labor, we can actually produce more output. And then see what happens in this economy to all the variables. Now, this is an interactive that's in the course. I understand this, but I'll tell you why I want you to do this. Now, look, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to move only one thing. I'm going to make people in Adam land more productive. And we're going to recalculate what happens in Adam land. So a few things happen. First of all, labor goes up a little bit. So if we reset the values and then recalculate, you'll see this. Labor will go up a little. Output will go up a lot. Income will also go up. Remember, income as output is equal to production So output in the form of spending will go up and output in the form of income will go up because they're equal to each other. Then what will happen is on the savings and the investment side of the economy, what will happen is that households will make earn more income, and that's all because every hour they work is an hour that they work at more output, so they get paid for their higher marginal product. This income, then, they don't all want to consume in one time. They want to kind of smooth that out. So they'll save part of it. So their savings supply will actually increase. So that's kind of the rightward shift here in the green line here in the capital market. Now, firms, for every unit of capital they have, are also going to produce more output now and on. And as a result, what they will do is they will actually want to invest more in order to benefit from the fact that the marginal product of capital has gone up. So both the investment and the savings curve shift rightwards and investment increases. What happens to the real interest rate is not super obvious because both curves shift, but it turns out that the real interest rate goes up a little. So we'll reintroduce the shock. Let's make it a little bigger so that's even clearer. So I'm moving one thing in this economy, namely how productive people are. And the result is that everything moves. That's what I want you to remember. So we're going from we're able to produce more to that production then results in higher income. But that higher income results in more spending. But part of the higher income also results in more saving. And it moves the interest rate around. And the final thing that happens is the labor supply curve will move a little because people will realize that there's two effects here. One is people will realize that wages are going up because the marginal product of labor is going up. Firms are basically paying workers more. That will want them to work more. But of course, part of what they also want to do is consume some leisure. They don't have to consume only consumption. So part of this effect on the labor supply is limited by the fact that people have a wealth effect where they say, oh, we're richer, so part of our consumption is going to be in the form of leisure. Then the labor demand curve will shift more, and that's basically what you see if you reset the values and you look only at the lower left-hand diagram here. You see the biggest shift is basically the labor demand curve moving. In fact, the labor supply curve seems to be moving upwards rather than outwards in this case. So there's a little bit of a dominating wealth effect here. So we calculate that, and there you are. So labor doesn't move a hell of a lot because of the labor demand moving along a pretty steep labor supply curve, or a relatively inelastic labor supply curve. But there's still an increase in the amount of labor used in the economy, and as a result, there's also an increase in the real wage because these workers are more productive. So all of these variables in this economy are moving together in response to one particular shock. So as a result, what you see in this economy is one thing moves and everything shifts in this economy. And that's why macroeconomics is so important, because it takes into account that everything moves together. Now, the example of productivity is useful for two reasons. Well, actually, three reasons. The first is, let's go back to the example. The first is, if we reset the value, what we learn is this. Some simple things. If an economy gets more productive over time, its output will go up over time. The amount of hours worked doesn't necessarily move a whole lot, and in fact, that's true across countries. labor supply, the amount of labor worked, the number of hours worked per person across countries. There's a lot of variation in it, but it's not much higher in rich countries than it's in poor countries. In fact, it's a little lower. But people make higher wages, output per person is higher, they have a higher level of consumption. Rich countries with higher productivity levels, which tend to be rich countries in the world, as you see in the course material, countries with higher TFP levels tend to be richer. The people there tend to be happier, and Adam is happier here under higher productivity. They have higher investment levels. And so basically, if productivity goes up over time, GDP goes up per person, and consumption per person goes up. But if productivity in a particular country is low compared to another country, then it will have low GDP. So I'm showing you this example, particular to let you know that what's going on here is that to explain the growth question, which is why do countries grow over time, it's really a matter of why does productivity grow over time. When large part, as you see in the data part of part 3.1, of growth across countries is all because of productivity and TFP growth. And that's true in the US, and that's true in many other countries in the world. Now, the other thing that's true, and that you also looked at the data part in 3.1, is that the biggest differences between countries, the biggest part of the large differences in standards of living across countries can be explained by TFP or productivity differences. Now, this is not only technology, this is also institutions, this is also that the markets work more efficiently in some countries than others. So we'll think a lot about what determines this TFP, this productivity level. But what I want you to take away from this so far is that these differences in TFP don't only move output around, they move everything in the economy around. And then the final thing that you get out of it, the third thing, so the TFP, how movements, differences in TFP between countries help you understand the development puzzle. Growth in TFP over time helps you understand growth. Now, the other thing that this interactive did, which is just important to kind of think about, is it helps you understand how all of these variables are connected. Why everything in the economy moves, even though one thing only moves, in this case is productivity. You could also have people's preferences move, you could have other things move. But the one thing moves and the whole economy shifts because people's income relates to what they're going to spend and how much they're willing to work. And the spending influences how much they're willing to work. That influences how much they're willing to save. It influences how many people and capital goods firms would like to hire. All of these things interact with each other and they're connected. They're like in the circular flow diagram. All of these things are basically the flip side of each other. And so if one thing moves, the whole thing moves. And so if that's besides the marginal analysis and thinking about households and firms make decisions, if that's the main thing you take away from these first 3 weeks in the course, you're really good on your way to understanding the main message. So that was the first thing that I wanted to kind of focus on. Now the next thing that I want to show you is to talk a little through a couple of ways to think through what you've done in the last week, which is think about market efficiency, and how you can think of market efficiency and what you're doing this week. So I'm going to do that in the second part of this office hour. But what's most important from here is to really think, once you've studied the course material of part 3, and you really understand why the macroeconomy moves together and how that helps you understand all the macroeconomic facts, why some countries are richer than others, why during business cycles, both output and consumption and investment and wages, they all go up when the economy is strong, like it is now in the United States, and then they all tend to decline when the economy is weak. There's only a few things that go up when the economy is in a recession or is weak. Think of unemployment, think of bankruptcies, things like that. So basically, negative things tend to spike when the economy, and that's called, tend to be counter-cyclical when the economy is weak. So what I want to do quickly is think through how you prepare for the exam. We'll have a longer review session in this course when we do this for the final. But I wanted to kind of talk you through a few approaches that come up every time I teach, and I think it's important for you to know as well. So you now have 3 weeks of course materials with a lot of units, a lot of videos, a lot of interactives, a lot of concepts. I hope you really enjoyed them. I enjoyed making this course, and I'm really glad that it had ended up giving you such a fun interactive experience online. But it does include a lot of things. It includes a lot of data. It includes a lot of interactives, things to think about. So how do you make sense of all of this material? Now, the most important thing to realize is that this is not only true for this course. If you're going to get a job, you'll see exactly the same thing, which is that you get increasingly much information, and you have to kind of learn how to deal with a high flow of information. So that's something you pick up in this course. But there's a few things to really start thinking about. And the first thing I already told you, which is I want you to really think about a structure. That circular flow diagram that I spoke about, you know what households do, you know the decisions they make. Tell a little story to yourself. Tell what it determines. Fill it in with your own words, with your own thinking, and then you can go back to the course material and think about what matters and what details might matter. Now, the other thing, so this is that framework will help you instead of studying all the details, which there are too many of, you can't remember all of them, help you really prioritize in what's important for the midterm. Of course, we have practice questions and quiz questions that are there because they help you prepare as well. So do realize that what's covered in those test your knowledge questions and those quiz questions are stuff that we thought was important when we prepared the course, and that's why we included them. But the other thing I want to do, and we see this repeatedly also with in-class exams, but also with online exams, is the issue with how students have a strategy on how to do this. So what I want you to think about is what strategy would you take for this exam? Now you're going to have an exam for which you have 3 hours time, and you have, I actually don't remember the exact number of questions. So let's look at the course material for that for a second. My apologies. Here's the course information. And here's the course overview. Your weekly assignments. Your graded assignments. So your midterm exam covers weeks 1 through 3. That's correct. And if I'm not mistaken, there's 35 questions. But that's something I am not 100% sure about. You will find that out when you start the exam, but that's I'm actually pretty sure it's 35 questions. And what do you do? Now, the one thing is you can see all those questions. So the nice thing about edX is you see all those questions. So what do you want to do? And what's important here is you're not going to know every single detail we taught you in the last 3 weeks in this course. I don't, as your instructor. When I developed this course, I didn't even know it when I was working on it, but now I go over it every time we teach it, and I refresh what I know, and as you can see, sometimes I forget details. So you will go through the same, and that's perfectly okay. Don't expect perfection. What you really want to do is think about it prioritizing things. And this is sometimes known as cognitive awareness. So you want to first understand what you understand best. Have a sense of what you know best. Then secondly, think about the things that you kind of understand, but that might take time for you to answer. And thirdly, also think about the things that you take a long time to understand, or a long time to answer because you're not sure about the answer or you haven't really studied it. What you want to do is, once you have those 3 layers in place, you want to attack the exam at those 3 different levels. So you want to first read through the whole exam, browse through it. You can do that, which is really nice. Browse through the whole exam. Do the decide which questions are easy and which questions are hard. And then with that in mind, start figuring out the easy ones first. To maximize your score, do the easy ones first. Get those out of your way. But that does require you understanding what you know and what you don't know. Otherwise, it's not feasible for you to assess this. So make that your first priority, not only understanding everything, but also having some real good understanding about what you have down, what you did well at, what you understood well. And then go through the other questions, then go through the questions where you have some sense of what they're about, try and answer those, and then go through the third group of questions, which are the questions that you're really not certain about. Now, hopefully that's a very, very small percentage of the questions in the exam. But of course, that is something that depends on how well prepared you are. But I want to say this most importantly. I can't tell you exactly what to look at, but the test your knowledge questions and the quizzes are relatively representative for what's on the exam. And the other thing that you should bear in mind is that when you sit down for the exam, make sure that you have a sense of that you read through the whole exam and that you have a sense of which parts are easy and hard. And I teach PhD students, I teach MBA students, I teach undergraduate students, and I've taught master students at many different places in the world. I tell that every time I teach, and if I do in-class exams, only half of the students, even if after I tell them explicitly, do this. They sit down, they go through the exam, they make a strategy, and then they attack the exam. So do this. That's the first advice I want to give you. And then, prioritize through the course material. One practical thing is if you run into practical problems with proctoring, the course does have some information on you on how to deal with that. I am not an IT technician, so I will not be the person answering this, and none of us on the discussion board know exactly how to do this. So if you have questions about proctoring, then go and look at student support. In particular, if there's issues with that, there's 2 things you'd like to do: is contact us at ASU at earnedadmission@asu.edu, as well as contact the proctoring service that helps us monitor the actual proctored exam. Now, the good thing, of course, is that on this midterm, you won't run into proctoring problems yet because it's not proctored. So you can just do it unproctored and you're okay. But again, if you run into technical issues, contact earnedadmissions@asu.edu, and they will help you, assist you, like they do with all other students and ASU online courses. So that's on the technical side, and this is kind of to help you prepare for the midterm. Of course, the rules are not to post any questions, even after the exam, about the exam questions on the discussion boards. We will either delete them or we will just post them that there's no answers possible. And then, of course, you're now working on week 4 and thinking about what we're going to do in this course going forward. So let's discuss this. Have a quick look at kind of what's coming up in the rest of the course, what's coming up this week and what's coming up in the subsequent 3 weeks. This week, you're going to do think about market inefficiencies in practice. And so you're looking through, we go to the course, you're looking through 2 parts. The first part is, that's coming up on Tuesday. So let me just show you the view for me that I see as your professor. The first part of the week that you're going to do in the rest of the course is you're going to look at market inefficiencies and public policies. So that starts, I guess, tomorrow for you. So we'll look at 3 particular markets with failures in it. The first market is the market for public goods and services. Why is it true that the government is involved in building parks and providing military defense? Why is that not being provided through a market? Why is there a role for the government to do so? Then the next thing you're going to look at is the market for knowledge and ideas, and then we'll look at the market for healthcare. So those are all 3 practical examples of the concepts of market inefficiencies that you looked at in part 3. So they're really applications of distortions, externalities, and frictions. And so we discussed those in abstract in part 3 too, and you will put those in practice and think about how they apply to markets we all interact in part 4.1. The other thing you'll do next week is look at the biggest market in the economy, and that's the market for labor. It's a market we are all involved in, most of us are involved in. And so we'll look at the labor market, and we'll really ask a very simple question, namely, why is there unemployment in the economy? So I can open the introduction for part 4 for you. But really what we're looking at is basically thinking through why is there unemployment? And it's actually in this section. So we look up the unemployment rate for you. So this is a plot with the unemployment rate for the United States. And at the moment, the unemployment rate's a little lower. This data goes to 2017. Unemployment rate's below 4%. So why does unemployment go up in recessions and goes down? And what particular market distortions and market inefficiencies in the labor market, which is the market in which most of us earn the bulk of our income and on which firms spend the bulk of their revenue in order to affect their costs, what type of market inefficiencies, what type of market distortions, and what type of frictions can help us understand, rigidities can help us understand why there's unemployment. And so we will do that in the second part of week 4. Then in week 5, we're going to look at the next part of actually week 5 and week 6. We're going to look at the next component of the circular flow diagram. We're going to look at what the government does, how it spends, how it taxes, how it builds up debt. And really what we're going to look at is these arrows in the circular flow diagram that are all related to the government. We'll discuss what the role of government is to support both long-run growth in the economy and help prevent or alleviate business cycles in the economy. And then what we'll do is, in the next week, we're going to look at a specific thing that the government does, which is supply money in the economy. We'll ask ourselves, what is money? And then in the second part of week 2, we're thinking about what the role of the central bank is in supplying money in the economy. Then finally, in week 7, we're going to look at trade and international finance, and we'll conclude with a few things, a review that helps you prepare for the final exam, as well as some videos from students who have graduated in economics, and they tell you what they're doing with their degree. So that's for the weeks to come. And then for the midterm, there's basically a lot to prepare. But I think if you stick to the idea of understanding the main structure of the course, the main concepts, and kind of fill the structure in with the details of the things that you know, then you're going to be well prepared to take on the midterm and to understand kind of the questions that you're good at and the questions you're not so good at. Since there weren't any specific questions for this office hour, I don't know whether I actually have that much else to say in this case. I do want to say one thing, of course, is continue to post on the discussion boards. Several of you have done that in a very clear way. Whenever you do so, please post your name and let us know who you are and what you're stuck with. Sometimes we might answer it for a little bit more clarification, but we are very much enjoying the posts on the discussion boards. And some of them have helped us also improve the quality of the course, for which we really want to thank you. I think that's pretty much it, what I have to tell you during this office hour. So why don't I just let you go off and study for the rest of the exam, and then we will talk sometime later this semester, then the next, actually not semester, in the next 4 weeks, right before the final. I hope you are going right ahead with the rest of the course and you're staying on track. And the final thing is there have been some questions about the course grades. And it's true, we are aware that the actual course grade meter in the edX interface is showing something different than the syllabus. And we will post an announcement. This has something to do with the technology glitch we're running into. We will post an announcement specifically on how we're going to deal with that throughout the course. And so you will know this by the time you have finished your midterm. We apologize for this, but there seems to be basically 2 pieces of software we're using are mixing things up. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that once you've done your midterm, you know where you are relative to the grade curve. And hopefully that will really help you assess how you want to go forward. Okay, good luck on everything. I'm looking forward to seeing how you're all doing. And then we'll see each other soon.